It's time for Twit This Week in Tech. Kind of a special episode this week. We've brought in two internet service providers to talk about regulating the internet, net neutrality, Title II, and more. It's our special edition on net neutrality. Join us for Twit.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
Bandwidth for This Week in Tech is provided by CacheFly at CacheFly.com. This is Twit This Week in Tech, episode 484, recorded November 16th, 2014. We don't touch your bits. This Week in Tech is brought to you by Audible.com. Sign up for the Platinum Plan and get 2 free books at audible.com/twit2. And whether you're a customer or not, you can get Bryan Cranston's hilarious narration of "You have to effing eat it" at audible.com/Cranston. That's free, audible.com/Cranston. And by Citrix GoToMeeting, the powerfully simple way to meet with coworkers and clients from the convenience of your computer, smartphone, or tablet. Share the same screen and see each other face-to-face with HD video conferencing. For a 30-day free trial, visit gotomeeting.com today. And by Squarespace, the all-in-one platform that makes it fast and easy to create your own professional website or online portfolio. Now introducing Squarespace 7 with even better site management tools and other improvements. For a free 2-week trial and 10% off, go to squarespace.com and use the offer code TWIT. And by NatureBox. NatureBox ships great-tasting snacks right to your door. Start snacking smarter with wholesome, delicious treats like agave citrus granola. Oh, man! You get your complimentary NatureBox sampler. Visit naturebox.com/twit. That's naturebox.com/twit. It's time for Twit This Week in Tech, the show where we cover the week's tech news. And we have a very, I think, an important twit this week, which doesn't mean it shouldn't be interesting and fun. But we have some important topics to introduce. Let me first introduce our panelists who are joining us this week. Formerly of Pebble. Before that, you were at Engadget, right?
That's right.
Myriam Joire is here. Great to have you.
Hi, everybody. Thanks,
and what are you doing these days? You're looking for work?
I'm looking for a gig. So if you guys want to ping me for something really
hire
cool,
Myriam.
Yes. I've got some time.
But even when you were at Pebble, you continue to cover mobile. You covered all of that stuff. So, and frankly, I got to be honest with you. I don't know, given Android Wear and the imminent Apple Watch, if there's much future for Pebble, to be honest.
Android Wear.
Oh, he's wearing a Moto 3. She's wearing a Moto 360. That means you, my friend, are apostate. You have left the fold.
No, I'll be honest with you. It's like, you know how I review phones on my blog?
Yeah,
and I can't make up my mind.
Yeah.
Every day it changes.
I like the 360.
I still wear my Pebble. It's just today was a 360 day.
I love my 360. You know, last night we were watching a movie. I paused it from my watch.
I know, wasn't it amazing?
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Nice to have you, Myriam. Also here, Mike Masnick, who I didn't know, but Mike's been on Twit once before. Like 300 episodes ago.
many years ago.
But I'm a huge fan of Tech Dirt. I read it religiously, mostly because of your commentary, although you've gone well beyond that. But for years, like since the late 90s, Tech Dirt, and it always felt like it was you, Mike, like kind of the voice in the wilderness, shouting against government surveillance, against big companies, about copyright, copy protection. In fact, really, I remember you most as just an opponent of copy protection in general. Now Tech Dirt covers everything.
Yeah, well, I mean, we've covered a lot of things for a lot of time, and I think a lot of people probably associate us with the copyright stuff, but it's, whatever is happening in innovation, technology policy that we think is interesting.
Today is going to be a different twit because we're going to begin with a conversation about net neutrality. President Obama on Monday announced his support for something that I think the EFF and a lot of privacy advocates and net neutrality advocates have suggested, which is that the FCC should regulate internet service providers as common carriers. This is a provision of the Telecommunications Act. Some have said, that's a bad idea. That's over-regulating it. Title II allows things like rate regulation. Others have said it's the only way the FCC can reasonably prevent paid prioritization, fast lanes. And I think we all agree that's something we don't want. So I thought what we do is bring two people here who have quite a bit of an interest in what the FCC is about to do. Two internet service providers. You've probably remember Brett Glass from his appearance on Security Now a few months ago. He is a WISP. He does a wireless internet service in Laramie, Wyoming. Great to have you, Brett.
Yes, good to be here.
For many years, a tech journalist, a commentator, but this is your full-time job now, is providing internet service for the small town of Laramie.
That is correct. For Albany County, Wyoming, with an average population density of 5 people per square mile.
Some particular challenges there with being an internet service provider, I'll agree. We also have with us an old friend, a guy who's been on the Screensavers. I've known him for years, Dane Jasper. He's the CEO and founder of one of the best independent internet service providers in the country, SonicNet. It's great to have you today, Jane.
Thank you, Leo.
Not
nice
Jane.
To see you.
Your name is not Jane. It's Dane. Dane, I've been a Sonic customer for years. We use Sonic here in the Brick House along with Comcast. You consistently get great report cards from people like Google on your privacy rules. EFF and others have said, SonicNet is one of the few internet service providers who just doesn't cooperate with the government. And so you, as far as I know, you're the only ISP to step forward and say we support Title II. So in just a bit, and I have a feeling, I'm guessing, Brett, that Title II is probably not something high on your list of good things.
Leo, that's correct. It would, especially for a small ISP like me, Dane's ISP is much bigger, it would involve just an insurmountable amount of red tape. There are more than 3,000 small ISPs in the country, and most of us could not afford the regulatory burden. There are also problems which I'll get into as we get into the discussion.
Great. I think before we get into that, and by the way, this isn't a debate exactly. I don't want a lot of heat. I want more light. I want the whole idea of this is for us to hear, and frankly, I'm on the fence to hear what the pros and cons are. I feel pretty confident that we need to do something to protect an open internet. I don't feel like the really big ISPs like Comcast care particularly about an open and free internet, and I really feel like the future of the nation, of our democracy, of how we live depends on an open internet. I feel like it's almost maybe a human right. But I'm not sure, and I think probably a lot of you at home feel the same way about what the right way would be to protect this and preserve it. I mean, actually, I am sure the right way to do it would be to have true competition and have, if everybody in this country had 12 ISPs to choose from, you could pretty much guarantee at least one or two of them would offer an open internet solution, and that would be the one you would choose. But unfortunately, about 80% of the people in this country have, at best, two choices, your phone company and your cable company, and both of them seem to be colluding against an open internet. So that's what we're going to talk about. But before we get into this, again, I hope this will be a chance for us to learn something. If you're in the chat room watching live, I will make sure that we include your thoughts and comments as well for Dane and Brett. And Mike and Myriam, I'd encourage you also to participate.
Absolutely.
But again, I don't want us to descend into a shouting match, which sometimes does happen, I think, when we get into this. This is one of those hot-button topics that people are very, very passionate about. But we've brought two of the smartest guys in here to talk about this, so I think we can do a good job of it. Before we do, though, let's talk a little bit about Audible.com. Just a quick mention of one of our favorite sponsors, a longtime sponsor of all of our shows. Audible is the best audiobook store in the world, 150,000 titles. All the latest books come out on Audible now. It used to be you'd kind of have to wait to get an audiobook of a bestseller, but the new Stephen King, which just came out, Revival, was available day and date as an audiobook as well. In fact, that's how I listen to books now at Audible.com. We're going to arrange for you to get 2 books free. So I'm going to give you a little help because that's one of the things that's challenging with 150,000 titles, an incredible list of science fiction, of technology books like the latest from Walter Isaacson, The Innovators, of business books, of course, fiction and nonfiction too. I love Audible. I listen to Audible all the time. I listen to it when I go to bed. I listen to it in the car. I listen to it at the gym. I listen to it when I'm doing dishes, walking the dog. We were cooking last night, and Lisa was listening to Gone Girl on Audible. We love our Audible books. If you'd like to get 2, here's the deal. Go to audible.com/twit2. You'll be signing up for the Platinum account. That's 2 books Oh, this is interesting. Mark Owen's book is out now. No Hero: The Evolution of a Navy SEAL. This is the guy who claims to be the guy who fired the bullet that killed Osama bin Laden. There's some really good books on here about history. Audible.com/twit2. Your first 30 days are free. There's Gone Girl. If you haven't seen the movie yet, or even if you have, wow, what a book. What a story. And they do this nicely because Gone Girl has two narrators. This is one of the things Audible does so well. A woman narrates the woman's, Amy's point of view. The man narrates Nick's point of view. So you really get that he said, she said feeling of the book in the narration, too. Just very nicely done. Audible.com/twit2. And what you'll be doing is signing up for the Platinum account. That's 2 books a month free, plus the daily digest of the Wall Street Journal or the New York Times. But that first month is free. Cancel anytime in the first 30 days. You'll get to keep the book forever. And I think that's a great deal. So give it a try today. I just got the new Peter F. Hamilton. I'm a big fan of his science fiction. Some great sci-fi in here. One of the things Audible's doing that's great with Audible Frontiers is they're recording, finally, for the first time, science fiction classics from Asimov and Heinlein that were never audio. So that's a Philip K. Dick. So that's a really great chance to hear some brilliant sci-fi, some classics. And then there's Samuel L. Jackson, Go the F to Sleep. So you pick and listen and enjoy. Audible.com/twit2. You know, we have mentioned before the Bryan Cranston narration. If you go to audible.com, this is actually, I forgot to mention, this is a special deal. If you go to audible.com/Cranston, Bryan Cranston, of course, what's my name? The star of Breaking Bad, the dad, and Malcolm in the Middle. He narrates an incredibly funny book by Adam Mansbach. You have to effing eat. Right now, whether you're an existing Audible or customer or not, this is free through November 26th. Andrew Mansbach's You Have to Effing Eat by Bryan Cranston. Not for kids, but the book does cover what many parents feel at mealtime but don't say out loud. It's a hilarious book, and it's absolutely free at Audible through November 26th. Don't delay. Audible.com/Cranston. There is no trial offer. This is if you're a customer or not. Just download it. It's only 4 minutes. Add it to your cart and enjoy. And by the way, if you love it, go to audible.com/twit2, and you've got a fabulous, entertaining.
Now, if Title II was enforced, would you have to bleep that, Leo?
Well, that's an interesting question. You know, I was talking on a radio show, Armstrong and Getty, this week, and radio people have no love for the FCC. They hate the FCC. If I say a bad word on the radio, I could not only could the station be sued, the network be sued, but I could be sued, and we could all be out of work. Just look at the Janet Jackson wardrobe malfunction, and not only did that cost the network, it cost all the individual stations a lot of money. So people are very afraid of the FCC, especially in radio. They don't like FCC.
Well, and to tie that back, until the neutrality proceeding and the 3.9 million comments on that, Janet Jackson's nipple slip was the most
number
commented, most complained about.
Yeah.
So the FCC does have an interesting dual role there.
So one thing that we could acknowledge right up front. So the FCC is run by Tom Wheeler, who is a longtime lobbyist for both the cable and the wireless industries. He replaced Julius Genachowski, who is an Obama crony, would be one word. Genachowski, when he was chairman of the FCC, proposed open internet rules. Those rules, Verizon sued and won in court. The court said you don't have the portfolio. The Congress hasn't given you the power to regulate, to promulgate these regulations. But the court did say there is a path, there is a way, and it seemed to me that the court, if you read the opinion of the court, very much believed in the idea of net neutrality, of an open internet. But they were compelled by law to say you don't have congressional authority to do that. And they said, however, we do think it's important, and you ought to consider Title II of the Telecommunications Act. So let me start with you, Brett. First of all, do you support an open internet?
I do support an open internet for some value of the term. One of the problems with net neutrality and then also the term open internet is that these are buzzwords that aren't very clearly defined. They vaguely smack of some kind of fairness, that would be, that might be enforced by government. But fairness is in the eye of the beholder. And the regulations that claim to be open internet regulations that were passed in 2010 were anything but fair in a lot of ways. In any case, what people tend to do, though, is they tend to claim that internet providers, including me and Dane, and certainly the cable and telephone companies, are somehow evil and must be regulated, and that somehow the internet will close up shop or somehow be restricted if that doesn't happen. That tends to be the argument and the reason for concern, the reason why people are considering Title II. Now, unfortunately, it's unclear, as Leo, as you began to mention, whether in fact Title II would be any better. A former FCC commissioner by the name of Michael Copps, who is no longer a commissioner but was until very recently, was talking about applying Title II to the internet, and he was an advocate of it because he said we need to have a national discussion about applying public interest and decency standards to the internet.
Yeah, that's scary.
Copps was interested in applying Title II, but the reason why was that he thought he might be able to censor the net,
right,
if that were done.
Well, he's gone. Let me. You're right. We should set the table here and say what neutrality is. And I propose, and I don't know, can we all agree that net neutrality is treating all bits on the internet equally? So, an internet service provider, a government, should not discriminate against any bit particularly, but all internet content should be delivered equally to the end user without censorship or discrimination. Is that fair?
Yep.
You can agree? Okay, Brett's making some noise. Dane, was that relevant? Relatively good?
Yeah, I think that's a good definition.
Mike Masnick?
For the most part, there's a couple of bits that are tricky in there, where there are certainly situations where you could see where something like allowing video generally faster than things that may take longer that don't matter. And that's where
you're talking quality of service or QoS.
Quality of service, right. So what you want to do is make sure that you don't swallow up quality of service in the definition that you're presenting.
Right. And what would you agree to that, Brett, so we all have a place to come from on this?
Well, there's many different kinds of equality. There's the equality of bits versus the equality of people. And I honestly think that what people when people advocate whatever they define as net neutrality, and again there are many different definitions, they're not really talking about all bits being created equal. They really care more about users and people who want to do things with the internet being created equal, and that may actually mean treating the bits unequally. The very first internet routers, which were called fuzzballs and were created for NSFNet, which is a predecessor of the internet, actually intentionally treated bits unequally so that they could treat the users more fairly. They delayed long file transfers, which might hog the net, so that people's interactive sessions when they were using a computer remotely would work better. So I would agree that we're talking about a concept of fairness here, but I don't think it necessarily means treating bits fairly as much as people.
That seems like a fair codicil to add to that. Turns out, according to Wikipedia, the term net neutrality came from Tim Wu, who's the author of The Kill Switch. He's a professor of law or media law at Columbia, and in 2003. He actually considered this an extension of a long-standing concept, the common carrier. And that's where Title II kind of comes into this. The idea being that the phone company isn't concerned with what voice traffic goes over it, but is responsible for making sure it's delivered in a timely and effective fashion. And I think the notion of the Telecommunications Act is that, at least of Title II, is that if internet service providers are treated that way as common carriers, then they would treat bits in the same way that a phone company would treat voice. Does that seem sensible? Is that
Dane? And common carriage is an applicable concept anytime you have a limited number of ways to get from point A to point B. And so, in the olden days, that might be a party running a ferry across a river, at a point. how do you get your goods from one side to the
They're
other?
literally carrying
you
people and
have
goods
to.
that
Yeah,
way.
so the common carriage, this goes back hundreds of years.
Interesting.
And, the idea is that you would treat all of the traffic equally.
Right.
And it's essential in an environment where consumers have limited choices. So think about a railroad line, and you've got a farm, and you need to get your product to market before it spoils, but the railroad lines, there's only one railroad line. It's important that that railroad line be regulated. Otherwise, they will, it's natural capitalism, abuse their position and charge you more than they should.
Yeah, they're not acting evilly. They're acting to maximize profit.
Yeah, it's capitalism at its best.
Yeah.
And,
Well, you're a capitalist. You want to make money with SonicNet.
of course.
Why is it that you embrace this idea of being treated as a common carrier?
So we've been in business for 20 years. We've had a lot of success, and the company's growing. We're hiring, Myriam.
Let's talk.
Yeah.
Actually, Dane would be a great person to work for.
We're about 200 employees now and growing quickly. We've had a lot of success. That success, I thank the internet for that success. What we sell isn't that interesting. It's a connection from A to B. We're a common carrier, effectively. What people want is to get to the internet, this wonderful thing. So all of our success has been driven by the wonderful thing that is the internet, the fact that people want to watch your show, or people want to watch YouTube or Netflix or play games online or whatever it is that's their area of interest. So I think the risk is in an environment where a limited number of carriers, in most markets, 1 or 2 or 3, have all the customers, have recognized their market power over those eyeballs, and are now using their control over those consumptive end users to lever payments out of large sources of content. That puts the internet as a whole at substantial risk. And so while it might be aspirational for me to get big and become powerful enough to abuse my customers and then demand tribute from Netflix to carry their traffic, I think fundamentally our success as internet service providers is based on this wonderful thing, the internet, and that is at risk when large carriers are mistreating consumers to exact payments.
Now, you're in a different kind of situation, Brett, because as a wireless internet service provider, and we've talked about this before, carrying Netflix to your customers is a costly thing for you.
Indeed, it is.
Yeah.
But the main thing, though, if to get back to the topic of common carriage for a bit, is that this is not the origin of the internet. The internet was designed exactly to be the antithesis of common carriage. It was it's basically what the internet is, and it still is, and what it started as a loose federation of people who owned networks, who tied them together willingly and agreed to pass traffic to one another. And these are private networks. They built them themselves. They had control of them, and it was because they agreed to pass the traffic using the common internetworking protocols that you had a network. It wasn't because they were obliged to. If you take a look at Title II and you start reading right at the beginning of Title II, it talks about common carrier obligations and just the complete opposite of people doing things willingly. It says it shall be the duty of every common carrier engaged in interstate or foreign communication by wire or radio to furnish communication service upon reasonable request, therefore, and accordance with the orders of the Commission. So right away, it talks about being required to serve people, not having a choice of who you serve, and then being regulated in every way about how you do it.
One of the things the president said, and the FCC, I think, kind of backed, is that they didn't have to enforce it 100%, that they could pick and choose which portions of Title II that they would enforce, and they wouldn't, in fact, enforce things like absolute access or rate protection, things like that. I guess some of this comes down to, would you trust the FCC not to take over those powers? And I think some of this conversation really comes down to whether you trust the government or not. And I understand the reluctance of people to say, well, we need government regulation to protect the internet. Even my friends at the EFF, John Perry Barlow, has said, yeah, we're kind of divided over this. Because on the one hand, we all wish to have a free and open internet, but it seems to be maybe that the government's the last person you should ask to preserve that. Is that how you feel, Brett?
Well, I guess I'm in great sympathy with that. It's funny. EFF originally was founded as a cyber libertarian organization. I was actually involved in bringing the people together who founded it. I was one of the organizers of the conference where they all met, and made a point of introducing them to one another.
Thank you.
But now they've gone they've turned around and made a 180-degree shift, and they are now advocating Title II. And even some of the founders, like Barlow, aren't sure what to think about this. Myself, I would be very worried about expecting any regulator to willingly forbear from any authority that they might have, any leverage that might give them power or influence. And Title II is huge. I have a list here. It contains 16 rule parts, 111 subparts, 682 pages, 987 rule sections, and more than 1,000 subsections, not counting all the case law that goes along with that. This is huge. And they're talking about forbearing from particular parts of it, essentially taking this law and cutting it up like a ransom note and only taking certain clauses, certain sections, certain paragraphs. This is not the way to do things. You don't want to take a law which was written – this is the Telecommunications Act of 1934. It was written for 19th century telephone companies, and try to cut it up and make it work. What you really want to have is a legislative process where Congress goes ahead and makes a law which is appropriate rather than taking a law which is completely inappropriate for the net and trying somehow to patch it together to do something it was never intended to do.
Does that scare you, Dane? I mean, this is your business. They could require all sorts of things. It'd be hard for you to do.
I think that the more substantial risk is to the internet and web properties, particularly new, innovative web properties, if there isn't some regulation around what carriers who dominate the marketplace can do to that traffic. So that I see, the threat to the internet as the top priority, and Brett talks about an insurmountable amount of red tape. Today, internet service providers are required to publish for the FCC a disclosure of traffic management practices. And so we publish a disclosure. I think it says we don't touch your bits. We don't modify, we don't filter, we don't engage in deep packet inspection. So, I think from a compliance perspective, if the assumption is that Title II will be, by and large, gutted, or rather, they engage in forbearance of all provisions and then begin to re-enable provisions that allow them to assure that traffic is treated equally. My expectation is those of us who treat traffic equally will have a pretty light regulatory burden.
These are the bright line rules that the president suggested. There are just 4 of them. No blocking. No, if a customer requests access to a website or service and the content is legal, an ISP should not be permitted to block it. No throttling, nor should an ISP be able to intentionally slow down some content or speed up others. Increased transparency, that's what you were talking about, letting consumers know about what happens at the last mile, things like filtering and throttling, and no paid prioritization. And that seems to be the hot button. No service should be stuck in a slow lane because it doesn't pay a fee. Those 4 rules seem like that's the minimum we would want.
Yeah, and the challenge is if you own a network that has, say more than half of the consumers in a given geography connected to it, you'd like to engage in paid prioritization, and you wouldn't want transparency around that, and you would engage in throttling.
Right.
Because you want to maximize the infrastructure investment that you've made. You'd like to squeeze as much out of that asset as you can.
Well, and there's other specters, too, the anti-competitive specter. I mean, Comcast is in every business. They're a television network. They make movies. They do telephone service. They do security service. In every case, these are services that have competition that comes in over the internet. Mm-hmm. And I'd be very afraid of a company like Comcast protecting its business interests and throttling net traffic. Brett, could you agree to those 4 premises? No blocking, no throttling, increased transparency, no paid prioritization?
I would agree to some of them under some circumstances. However, if you believe that those, let's just, for the sake of argument, you believe that those four things are important and they're what the law ought to say, then the last thing that you want is Title II. Because Title II provides for pay prioritization and provides for discrimination. I'll read you just a little bit more from Title II, which I have in front of me because most people are advocating Title II without knowing what it says. It says, communications by wire or radio subject to this chapter may be classified into day, night, repeated, unrepeated, letter, commercial, press, government, and such other classes as the commission may decide to be just and reasonable, and different charges may be made for the different classes of communications.
That's specifically paid prioritization.
Exactly. It actually authorizes paid prioritization, and this is not one of the sections. This is still at the beginning. It's still in a section that you really can't forbear from without losing all of the definitions of what the rest of the title means. So it actually says that. As for transparency, the court said that the FCC had the authority to ask for a disclosure statement, a traffic management statement, without resorting to Title II. It said that the FCC could do that under Section 706 of the Telecommunications Act.
Right.
So it doesn't need Title II authority for that. Now,
but if that's the case, why would Comcast and Verizon not want Title II? Seems like this gives them permission.
I think they don't want Title II because of the incredible amount of potential red tape. Even Google doesn't want Title II. Google deployed, as you know, Google deployed fiber in places like Kansas City. And Google Fiber includes television, but it does not include telephone service. And Google has said that the reason why they did not include telephone service in Google Fiber was because it would have subjected them to an insurmountable amount of red tape. Because of Title II. And this is Google. This is a company that could afford to do it.
Google, though, is not clear in its message because, of course, they're also paying a lobbying firm that is lobbying for Title II regulation. They're both Google and Facebook.
Of everyone else, but not of themselves.
Well, all right. Go ahead, Mike. You were about to say something?
Yeah, so the thing with the paid prioritization in Title II is that what's pretty clear is that what the FCC could do is basically say that paid prioritization is considered unreasonable under Title II, and therefore it is effectively blocked, even though, the way Brett reads it and the way people who are opposed to Title II read it, they pretend that it says you can't do paid prioritization under Title II, or that you can do paid prioritization under Title II, but that's not really accurate. So as long as the FCC makes it clear that they consider paid prioritization to be de facto unreasonable, then it can block Title.
Wouldn't it be better if Congress just wrote some rules that were specifically about the internet, talked about these 4 bright line principles? Wouldn't that be the best solution?
Well,
I guess it's not going to happen, but
when's the last time Congress actually did what you thought they should do? Right? You're absolutely right. Like, the absolute best solution here is absolutely to have Congress fix it. But does anyone
we all agree on that?
Well, I bet Brett doesn't.
Is that unanimous? That the best thing to do is to write something sensible from scratch for the internet, the ideal thing?
Well, what would be your ideal solution?
My ideal solution would be actually one which is was sort of embodied in the mantra of FCC Chairman Tom Wheeler, which is competition, competition, competition. The ideal thing would be to eliminate the need for any regulation, even considering any regulation, by stimulating competition among broadband providers. In my small town, I guess we're lucky. We only have a population of about 28,000 people, but we have 12 broadband providers serving our town. And that, which is tremendously good. A lot of people are under the impression that they only have 1 or 2, but they actually have more. There are actually smaller providers like me, but the public either doesn't know about them or doesn't consider them because they think you have to be big to be a good internet provider, which I think a lot of small companies like mine are counterexamples. Well, in any case, if we lower the barrier to entry, and there are even more of us, more than the 3,000 competitive ISPs like me who already exist, nobody I think even the people who are the most ardent advocates of regulation now would be advocating it, because they would recognize that if you didn't like what a provider was doing, you could just switch. Unfortunately, the FCC hasn't enabled competition. In fact, it has failed to do a lot of things which it said it would do in the National Broadband Plan in order to enable competition. It hasn't acted on certain things like special access, which is the access to the rented connections that an internet provider needs to get to the backbone. It hasn't made pole attachments easy, so that it's not easy for an ISP to put wires up on the poles. There are a lot of things that it could do instead of pursuing this entire thing that would actually make more sense, and I think ultimately be the best for everybody.
But Wheeler himself acknowledges that there isn't any competition right now. He says 80% of this is Wheeler, 80% of American homes can only get high-speed internet, 25 megabits or better, from one provider. He says at 25 megabits, there's simply no competitive choice for most Americans. 3/4 of American homes have no competitive choice for high-speed internet, and then there's 20% who have no service at all. So even Wheeler himself says competition doesn't exist. Dane, your response?
This is something that Brett and I agree on. It. If there was broadly available and really effective competitive access, and if consumers not only had 12 choices, but were actively choosing from those 12 choices, then we wouldn't be having a discussion about neutrality, because you wouldn't have a provider controlling the vast majority behaving the way that Comcast and Verizon and others are.
I mean, it's hard to switch, for one thing. Just call Comcast and try to switch to another provider.
Yeah.
Ask our friend Veronica Belmont and Ryan Block how hard that was.
I think we're kind of perhaps going at this the wrong angle in a way. I think we need to look at what what consumers want and what the product is that they want, and go backwards from there into regulatory. I have a strong stance on all of this, and a lot of it is based on wireless and not wired. Because, I mean, we're talking primarily about ISPs, and I realize some of the ISPs are wireless. Indeed, some of them in San Francisco are wireless, like Monkey Brains.
Right.
But I'm talking about...
You're talking about cell phone.
The fact that ultimately we need to get most of the population... let's rewind. I think the internet is a human right. So if you start with that...
I agree with you.
That everybody should have water, food, shelter, healthcare. I'm a big proponent of universal healthcare. I'm Canadian, so that's probably where I'm coming from.
And the ability to communicate.
Right, and so the ability to communicate has become critical. So that's why I think the internet is human right. If you look at it that way, then we need to get everyone on the internet in some way. And I hate to say that, but the most efficient way to do that right now is wirelessly.
Frankly, I think there's another solution, which is to get local and you probably wouldn't like this, Dane. Maybe you would. To get local and regional governments to use their power of eminent domain to take over infrastructure, to run the infrastructure like you run the power company or you run the water company, and then let companies like Sonic ride on top of it. And then we could get, many companies competing with it for internet service. Is that unreasonable, undoable? That's Bob Frankston's plan.
And that's the socialism approach. And we see that in Europe in some locations.
It's worked well in the communities that have done it.
Yeah, the network in Stockholm is a good example of that. I don't think that comports well with the U.S. Viewpoint
It'll
on
never happen,
capitalism. But let me go back to Myriam's point about internet access as a human right. And Brett, you talked about, Netflix costs you a lot to deliver, but Netflix is part of the internet. I think if you're selling the internet as a service, you should provide as much of it as consumers want, or you should create tiers or limits. I'm not against the idea of, you're buying X gigabytes per month, or you're buying Y speed. Although we don't do either of those things. We unlimit and we provide a single tier. But if a service provider has costs and they can reflect those costs in the product, I think that's reasonable to do.
That's something we've talked about, Brett, because I know Netflix costs you a lot of money, and you would like to pass that cost along to consumers.
And it'd be reasonable for him to do so. I think he needs to charge people more if his costs aren't being covered.
Provider, and there's real issues.
The competition
but the point is, if he says I'm selling internet and it's $50, That needs to be the whole internet.
Right.
And if he needs to limit people's total consumption, then that's a service package perhaps. But I think it's unreasonable to say, well, we're going to engage in some management. We're going to slow down the Netflix. And I see wireless ISPs are doing this all the time.
Right.
Where, they're slowing down services like Netflix.
Brett, you've said that
and they still call it internet.
Right. You said your customers are price sensitive, and you can't very well say to them, well, it's going to cost you $50 more if you want Netflix.
We don't do that. We don't discriminate in particular for or against any source of content, including Netflix. However, the fact of the matter is that Netflix is a bandwidth hog. As a matter of fact, it has a particularly insidious property in that no matter how much bandwidth you have, it tries to take that and it tries to take more. And if it can't get more, sometimes it buffers on you.
And the more there is, the better it looks. And that's what your consumers what end users want.
That's what they want.
Is, they want to watch the video on the internet. And when you sell them a subscription to the internet, that's what they should get.
Brett, I don't want to misquote you, so correct me if I'm wrong, but my impression when we talk with Steve Gibson is you would like to go to Netflix and say, hey, if you want to get to my customers, you need to pay me for the extra cost because you're such a burden on my network, because you can't go to customers and tell them that. Is that accurate?
Yes. You see, when this is exactly the point. You see, customers do expect, and reasonably so, that that when they buy a connection from me, they're buying a connection to the whole internet, and they should be able to do anything they want with the internet. They want to go to Netflix and buy something, and they don't know that Netflix imposes a huge burden compared to their web browsing or something else that they do. My opinion is that the correct answer to this is what Tom Wheeler started talking about and was lambasted for talking about, which is called two-sided markets. What happens is you buy your internet connection, which is a good basic internet connection for doing the usual things, and then if you go and you buy a really intense bandwidth hogging service, what happens is some of the money that you pay for that service when you subscribe to it comes back around through the provider of that service to buy extra bandwidth so that you can actually receive it. What Netflix does, unfortunately, is it just says, oh, well, ISP, no, you should get no additional money for this additional use of capacity. Instead, you should just allow your users who don't subscribe to Netflix to cross-subsidize the ones who do. And that's not fair because it raises prices for the people who are not subscribing to Netflix, and is leaving money in Netflix's pocket when it should be really should be helping to pay for this extra capacity.
Fundamentally, turning the internet into a two-sided market breaks the internet.
Yeah.
I mean, that is if what you're selling is access to the internet and you want to limit the speed or the total consumption, those are reasonable things to do. You build a transparent service package out of that. But if you're going to not let people get to content unless content pays you, what does that do to innovation? What does that do to startups? What does that do to the internet as a whole?
But
what does that do to Twit? This is taking a market power position.
Hold
on, Brett, because we'll give you a chance. Let Dane finish.
This is taking a market power position, particularly amongst infrastructure service providers who control the last mile, who own the wires to the premises, and giving them unlimited power to do anything they want. And that will break the internet fundamentally.
Brett?
I think...
Wait a minute, let's Brett.
Okay. This I'm sorry, but that's I've got to take issue with that statement. People aren't paying me for an unlimited connection to the internet with unlimited resources. Bandwidth where I am located is extremely expensive.
Well, then you should limit them.
It can cost as much as $20 per megabit per second per month in bandwidth for me to provide people with service. Someone has to pay that bill.
Your customer should pay that bill.
And it'd be nice if the customer went ahead and was willing to pay that bill. But they say, but they don't understand. The customer doesn't understand Netflix takes this much bandwidth versus, say, YouTube taking this much bandwidth or whatever.
I mean, they don't need to understand. You just say
they also like
it's X gigs per month.
They like their charges to be predictable, and they don't like overage charges. We don't charge any. We don't have any data caps. And they really expect, according to what they subscribe to, they expect the money that they pay for each of these things to cover it all. When the customer subscribes to Netflix, they might need to bump their bandwidth. And the easiest way for that to happen is for them to pay that extra money when they subscribe to Netflix. That money should be included right there in the bill for the Netflix subscription, and then should come back around to the ISP.
All right.
That way, the customer isn't suddenly surprised to find out that the service that they ordered from Netflix exceeds their connection, and suddenly, I've got to pay more still besides the cost of the Netflix connection in order to stream. It just makes things better for the consumer. It's simpler. It meets their expectations. It really works out better, and it even works out better for Netflix because their customers are not disappointed. They subscribe to Netflix, and voila, they're able to stream it. Now we have somehow to recover the cost of the capacity.
It's challenging
And
because a little service provider doesn't have market power over Netflix.
Right.
So
we don't have market
You
power
can't go to
over
Netflix
anybody.
and say, "Give me." But Comcast did. Comcast
Yes.
last year turned the knob down. They didn't buy enough interconnects, but they had effectively turned the knob down.
Well, and this is a competitive challenge because a service
actually-
provider like Brett or Sonic, we don't have the ability to abuse enough customers to create the leverage to force a payment. So the only way to create a double-ended market that works for small and large service providers would be to regulate it. And Brett's asking for less regulation, but he also seems to be asking for more.
I'm not asking for regulation. I'm asking for markets to do this. I'm asking for this to happen because the market wants it. By the way, as for Leo's brief comment there that Comcast turned the knob on Netflix, there is growing evidence that in fact Netflix turned the knob on Comcast as leverage when they were in negotiations, because people found out, this is interesting, people who were having trouble with streaming Netflix over their Comcast connections, they went and used something called a VPN. A VPN is a special piece of software which basically all of your data goes into a tunnel and it comes out in a different place on the internet, and it looks like you're out there in a different place on the internet. They used a VPN over the same Comcast connection, and suddenly they were able to stream smoothly.
Well, you
So
can
that
make the
means that
argument
the Comcast
that
connection
Comcast is
wasn't
doing
limited.
deep packet inspection and wasn't able to do so on a VPN, or that Netflix. You can make the argument both ways, Brett. I don't think that that's conclusive in either direction. We're going to take a break because I want to come back and I want to talk about solutions, because I think we've set out what the issues are, and you can see very clearly why people want regulation, why people don't want regulation, and I think this is a very challenging situation, and I'd like to hear what you guys as a group think we could do to make this work. We can't solve this in an hour, but we'll try. We only have a few more minutes. Our show today brought to you by another company that rides on the internet, but so much of the innovation that's happened in this country is because of the internet. GoToMeeting makes it possible for people to work anywhere and yet collaborate together, see each other, share screens. Nowadays, many businesses are distributed all over the world, and really you can thank companies like GoToMeeting. Really, GoToMeeting, because it's one of the most used, probably had a lot to do with this. You pay once a month, a flat fee. You hold as many meetings as you need, as often as you want, as long as you want, with anyone, anywhere. You're in a virtual space where you can see their screen, they can see your screen. Turn on the cameras. You got crystal clear high-def video conferencing for a very affordable price. Travel's ridiculously expensive, time-consuming. Nobody wants to do that. And a phone call may not do it. Email may not do it. I think the best way to get the work done is to see each other, to see each other's screens, to collaborate together, to present in real time, and that's what GoToMeeting lets you do. I want you to try it free right now for 30 days. Visit GoToMeeting.com. Click the Try It Free button. You can present from an iPad. You can use mobile devices. I've literally held GoToMeeting sitting out in the backyard, enjoying the beautiful weather, and no one knows until I turn on the camera, and then they see that I'm wearing a bathing suit. But you don't have to turn on the camera. GoToMeeting.com. Click the Try It Free button, and you got 30 days free. Just a great service from Citrix. They are great, and I think they're an absolutely the best service provider in this particular area. So try it today. GoToMeeting.com. This is a great panel. I just want to thank you guys, especially for keeping on an even keel here and really talking about the problem and the solution and the issues for you. It's really good to have two internet service providers here. Brett Glass, he runs a wireless internet service provider in Laramie, Wyoming. It's called
Lariat. And as far as we know, we were the world's first wireless internet provider. We've been doing this for more than 23 years now.
What are you using? Is it microwave? How are you?
It's classified as either microwave or millimeter wave, depending on the link. And believe it or not, we are actually able to deliver up to 1.25 gigabits of bandwidth if people want it with anywhere within our service area. We're very lucky to be able to have a good fiber connection, which is a fiber and microwave connection back to the internet backbone that lets us do that.
And when you started this, it was a community network, wasn't it? It wasn't a commercial enterprise.
That's correct. We started originally as a cooperative, as a rural telecommunications cooperative, because that's what the IRS classified us as. And we operated that way for 10 years. And then the members decided they didn't want to keep on meeting and voting. They just wanted somebody to provide them with good commercial service and to be able to get investors. And so they went ahead and they allowed my wife and I to take it private, which we did. Interestingly, our traffic management policies, which do involve sometimes shaping traffic, were developed by consensus when we were a co-op. So the members actually agreed that certain traffic ought to be prioritized just as it was in the very beginnings of the internet to make things go more smoothly.
And of course, we've killed your homepage, as we do every time you're on.
Yeah, it's
Lariat.net. But wait till later, okay? LARIAT.net.
I'll keep trying.
Well, I got it up here. But just would you put a lower third in Brett's lower third for the URL? Because we should give Brett a nice plug. Also here from SonicNet, which is my internet service provider, but also I think many people recognize Dane Jasper, the founder and CEO, as one of the leaders of independent internet service providers. I know you've served on CASP and other, I don't know how you pronounce it, CAISP, ISSP. And it's so good to have you here. I appreciate it. SonicNet. You're in how many communities now?
We're in 125 California cities in greater LA,
awesome.
the Bay Area, Sacramento area.
Yeah,
so
that's really awesome.
we passed about 5 million premises today.
And, I remember when it was Dane in a closet, so I'm not saying you've come out of the closet. I'm just saying that you were in. Never mind.
Thanks, Leo.
You did it all yourself in the early days, right? That's why Linux is his license plate.
Yeah.
By the way, Leo, my license plate says Unix, and I'm building a Unix server here on the table next to my.
You guys
computer
are P's.
Dueling license plates. I love it.
Also here
cool.
as Myriam Joire. We love having Myriam on. She gives us a unique perspective, the Quebecois. No. She gives the Quebecois perspective.
There you're going.
Really?
There again.
You want single-payer health care?
No,
really? Come on.
No, I'm French from France and Canadian English. That's why everybody always gets
I'm always confused. French from France.
Which is also a bunch of socialists.
Yeah. You bet.
Watch out.
You bet. And joining us from TechDirt, Mike Masnick. I want to wrap up this section because Mike, maybe you can start us off. Sure. You've been on the forefront of this. You've been talking about this for years, like literally since 1997. Is there a solution?
Well, I mean, I think part of the issue is that it's changed over time, and sort of the situation has changed over time. And I mean, earlier it was mentioned that like the EFF has changed their position on net neutrality, and I think that's actually true of myself as well. A lot of it does go back to whether or not there's real competition in the market. What would be happening would be very different if there were real competition. So, there might be a solution if there were real competition. In the meantime, without significant competition in most markets, it seems like the best solution. I know Brett disagrees, but from my perspective and from the perspective of a lot of us, in the interim, without the competition, there needs to be something to keep the really large ISPs in place from abusing their market power.
Yes. All you have to do is look at what AT&T did. They said, well, if you're going to impose net neutrality rules, we're not going to build any more fiber. They're taking their ball and going home.
They were never going to build most of that fiber. That was, as we've said, it was fiber to the press release, right? They announced most of those. Every time Google said that, we're doing fiber here, suddenly AT&T would put out a press release. Oh yeah, we're doing fiber there too.
Yeah. But, Verizon did the same thing. Verizon started rolling out Fios and then got tired of it and stopped.
Exactly, and
those fibers are heavy.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Verizon used to have, some pretty visionary management that really did believe in fiber and really believed in it. and went on a big install, and Wall Street freaked out because they said, how can you do that? That's expensive to put in fiber, even if that's what customers want. And so as soon as that management was gone and Wall Street kept complaining, suddenly all the fiber deployments dried up.
Dane, Jasper's rolling fiber out. You got gigabit going out in a number of communities. You have it just up the road here a piece.
Yeah, we do in Sebastopol here in the North Bay, and we've got projects underway in the East Bay and Brentwood and in San Francisco.
I think Verizon said it was $5,000 a subscriber, something like that. It's very expensive.
It's not that expensive.
Okay. Are you doing fiber to the curb or fiber to
No, it's fiber to the home.
Fiber to the home. Wow.
The costs of building it have gotten lower. But remember, this isn't a market. I'm not operating in a market with 5 dwellings per square mile.
Yeah, I mean, I understand Brett has some very special
unique issues.
needs.
And backhaul is also a challenge in a very rural market. And so in each market, you have to approach your technical solution differently. Right. But yeah, we are, our overall vision, and I think we all agree that neutrality is an issue because we have a failed competitive market.
Right.
Yes.
And I take some responsibility for that because I'd like to fix that. My vision is to solve that. And so fundamentally what we're building is broadbanded up to a gigabit and unlimited phone service for $40 a month.
Right.
And so where we only have copper, we deliver that with VDSL2 or ADSL2 plus, depending upon the distance. Where we have fiber, we deliver that at gigabit over fiber. And I believe that consumers, when presented with a compelling competitive option, will move to that product. And when there are 12 different folks to choose from, and consumers actively making those choices, this debate will be moot.
Right. For many of all of your DSL installations, you're riding on top of the copper provided by the incumbent carrier.
Yeah, and I published an item this last week that reiterates the importance of local loop unbundling. The 96 Act really visualized an investment ladder where competitors would first deliver over copper, then overbuild and deliver with their own infrastructure, and that's the path that we're walking.
Yeah. What if the FCC said to the cable companies, hey, you got to do the same thing that the phone companies are doing. You have to open up your physical plant to other providers. Would that solve it?
Or to me, where I build fiber. And, that's the situation in some other countries. Infrastructure providers need to quantify their costs and lease infrastructure at cost plus a defined margin. And, that was really the vision of the 96 Act, was to create a vibrantly competitive marketplace. And you look at, neutrality debate in Europe and the choices that consumers have. In the UK, you can buy internet from Tesco, the grocery store.
Right.
So lots and lots of choices.
They don't do the infrastructure, but they provide over the top.
Correct.
Internet.
And there are also infrastructure providers like Virgin who provide over cable. So a lot more choices, whereas, through the 2000s, Chairman Michael Powell, now a cable industry lobbyist, rewound some of the unbundling requirements and really kind of kneecapped the 96 Act.
Right.
We've ended up with the unfortunate outcome of the regulatory decisions that were made during the Michael Powell era and the Kevin Martin era, which were intended to create a duopoly. Now we've ended up with the outcomes of a duopoly. So today's FCC needs to regulate that for the benefit of consumers. Now, we, entities like Brett and myself, need to work hard to bring more competitive choice. And when we're successful at that, this point will become moot.
There is a precedent. When the FCC auctioned off the 700 megahertz spectrum, Google bid, but was able to convince the FCC to make some open rules. They said, whoever buys this should be required to make it open. Verizon ended up getting it, and Verizon has chafed at these
and broke the
rules. Has chafed at this, but there is a precedent for the FCC to mandate. You got to keep this open. I'd love to see them open up the cable physical plant. That would make a difference, wouldn't it?
It'd make a huge difference, and
make that a requirement of the Time Warner Comcast.
I mean, we need a philosophy of abundance. We need to create a broadband access product where the costs are tied well to the cost of infrastructure, and router ports and optics. The costs of those infrastructure components are dropping like mad.
Right.
And what consumers need to end up with is abundance as a result, not being squeezed and have those assets exploited.
And I would argue it's the same with wireless. I think there is this indoctrination going on by all parties, in particular the wireless carriers, that there's a lack of spectrum.
Right.
But what we really need to do is have the government free up all the military spectrum that's no longer used, that's old analog stuff, and we could open that up to wireless and not have crazy auctions that cost billions of dollars for it, and actually get wireless to everyone at an affordable rate.
Well, and we had
The
Martin
backhauls
Cooper
still
on,
an issue,
the
but-
father of the cell phone. One of the things Martin said, one of his big campaigns is digital. Because spectrum can be wireless spectrum can be virtually infinite as long as you're not using analog signals.
Well, we're not really anymore, but I mean, and digital
But
keeps
in many
improving. But the
spectra we
military
are.
has, if you look at the spectrum assignments, their spectrum is insane. Like to
Right.
today's standards, you could run 5 times the amount of traffic we run on our public networks right now. On what? So I'm not suggesting they leave all that behind. They need it. But I think there's a lot of it that could be repurposed. And I think, to me, a progressive government towards, this idea of net neutrality being, human right is to kind of start putting the systems of government in place to make that possible, and not letting the corporate interests take over and in trying to manipulate that.
Right.
And I think that's the problem. I'm not suggesting that the FCC has full control. I think that it's more about trying to find a way, because right now we have like 2 big wireless choices, 2 big wired choices in most urban areas, right? I mean, we also have T-Mobile and Sprint on wireless, and some of them, T-Mobile's doing pretty well. But I think that, if you look at, the big players, it's really AT&T and Verizon wireless, and they're bullies. They lobby the government,
And they want more spectrum.
Exactly.
But auctioned at the highest price because they're the ones that can afford to buy it.
Exactly.
And, WISPA, the Wireless ISP Association, has long pushed for more unlicensed spectrum. An abundance of unlicensed spectrum, whether it's recaptured from former military use or television white spaces, would be great. If, however, it goes to the highest bidder,
Exactly. You're back to
it's not going to be Lariat.
then it's not going
It's
to work
going to be
out.
Verizon
It's
and
not going to be
AT&T.
Sonic.
And is government going to try and maximize the return for the taxpayer by selling that spectrum to the highest bidder, or are they going to try and maximize the return to the taxpayer by assuring that you can get connected at a reasonable cost?
Brett Glass, what's your solution?
Well, I guess my take on it is that competition hasn't failed yet. There are, as I mentioned, about 3,000 competitive carriers about my size, like me, who are willing to compete as hard as they can. All we need is to be at least not discouraged by the regulatory authorities, and we can do great things. On the other hand, if we take a ready, fire, aim approach, if we regulate before we try stimulating competition, which, by the way, is required of the FCC by that same Section 706, then our only choice is going to be a regulated duopoly, and I don't think that we'll be as happy with that. Our company tried different ways to work around the FCC not facilitating competitions. We fought to use the copper infrastructure. We fought for what was called dry copper. And the telephone company said to us, "Oh, sure, yeah, you can go ahead and rent our lines." But then they made the wholesale price of renting the line higher than their price for complete DSL
I'm sure
service.
Dane's not unfamiliar with that practice either.
Yeah,
I'm sure he's not.
These guys are horrible. Yeah.
We tried to participate. I'm sorry.
Go ahead, finish, Brett.
I was just going to say
We tried to participate. Go ahead. Dane.
Go ahead.
It's a little difficult because Brett, unfortunately, is on Skype. Next time you got to fly out from Lariat.
I'd be glad to. The weather there is much better than here.
Yeah, I
where
bet it
it's
is. Go ahead
snowing.
and finish, and I'll give you a chance, Dane, to respond.
We tried to get into a spectrum auction, and it was folly. The reason why is that essentially there is so much value to the mobile carriers in foreclosing all competition that the spectrum is worth several times as much to them to keep competition out as it is to us. We couldn't even we couldn't even break even on bidding the prices that they bid. And so as a result, we're locked out of spectrum. We're locked out of special access, the lease lines. We're locked out of the local loops if we want to try to use the copper. Basically, the FCC has failed to stimulate competition. But the good news is that small ISPs like me are scrappy. We've managed to bypass all of that anyway by using unlicensed spectrum, by doing other creative things to try to make an end run around the fact that we haven't been treated fairly. If the FCC would only treat us fairly, there would be no need whatsoever for any of these regulations. The whole discussion would be moot. And so I say competition, 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 and please let's try it first, because if we impose Title II first, my company may not be able to stay in business.
Dane?
Dry copper is achievable. It's eminently doable. That's how we connect many of our customers today.
That means they don't have phone service from the incumbent carrier, but they do have internet service from you on top of their copper.
It means that we co-locate in the central office exchange buildings, lease copper to the premise, and put next-generation service over that.
Right.
So we're delivering POTS voice as well as VDSL2, pair bonding.
That's your Fusion project.
Yeah, so that's a product that we can
you
deliver
can see
very
why the
high
phone
speeds.
company is not highly incented to support this. They're required to.
It's regulated, and I don't know why Brett has had challenges deploying that. That's a key part
Our
of the
State
96
Public
Act.
Service Commission, I'll tell you why, is because our State Public Service Commission basically allowed them to discontinue some of the services and to raise the prices so high that it was uneconomical.
And that's illegal, but...
And we haven't had those challenges.
Yeah.
So, the challenge I see in what you're trying to accomplish, Brett, in creating a two-sided market is that will only work when you're big enough to harm your customers badly enough to extort money from large sources of content. And it's not plausible that any of us will get big enough to engage in that kind of anti-competitive behavior.
Yep.
I guess I have to disagree in that I believe that it's actually a win-win. And the smarter providers of content are going to recognize that. Netflix might not, but HBO might, or CBS might. As people shift their TV viewing over to streaming, and this is beginning to happen, the light bulb is going to go on in somebody's head, and they're going to say, this is a good idea. And, go ahead and pay less for your broadband connection, because then when you stream with us, we'll take care of the cost of the bandwidth. That will want, that people will like that because their overall bill will be lower. So I think ultimately the market forces could correct this problem.
I'm going to wrap this up because we've gone an hour, and that's as much as I wanted to do, and I don't think we have at all come to a solution. But I think it's become really clear why this is such a challenge, not only for all of us, but for Congress, which barely understands what's going on, the courts, and the FCC. This is a knotty problem, and yet it's probably one of the most important political decisions that needs to be made in this country today.
Can we talk about Tom Wheeler being a dingo?
Did he eat your baby?
No, but I just thought it was the best
He
part
has
of this
proposed,
whole...
one of the things Tom Wheeler proposed, which is interesting, is that there be net neutrality for the interconnects, but not for the retail internet. Is that a solution any of you would consider?
I can volunteer a comment on it.
Yeah.
Many advocates of net neutrality are up in arms about a practice which is called zero rating. You know what that is?
No.
It's where you don't pay out of your data allocation. You basically don't. You, the consumer, don't pay any money when you're going to certain services because they pick up the tab for the bandwidth.
Some of the phone companies are doing that right now. You get free Beats music, for instance, on AT&T.
Exactly. Yeah. So a lot of the people who are very strong advocates of certain ideas of net neutrality say that that's a bad idea. But essentially, what we're talking about when we're talking about regulating the relationship with the content providers under Title II is we're talking about zero rating that end. And declaring a price of zero for either end isn't really neutral. It's not really fair. What it would require, it would give me as an ISP an obligation to every single person out there who puts up a web server to give them something for free. I don't think that's the right way to go about solving it. There may be some other ways, but I don't think that's it.
You know, it's funny. We all know what we want, but it's darn hard to get there.
Kittens?
Dane, one final word. I gave Brett a final word. Any final thoughts from you?
I'll agree with Brett. We need effective competition.
Yep.
We've been working hard on that for a lot of years, and we're continuing to fight that fight, and I'm excited about doing that. I'm really optimistic about the future and the potential. Right. I think neutrality is important because we need to not break the internet in the meanwhile, and not having our competitors enjoying a subsidy. If a competitor can get $1 or $2 or 10 out of sources of content and I can't because I'm smaller and don't have that market power, that actually threatens competition.
Right.
So this is an important issue. We need to protect the internet, and if that means regulation, I think it's a reasonable course.
Dane Jasper's founder and CEO of SonicNet. If you're lucky enough to have it in your neck of the woods, you ought to get it because it's a great internet service. And I thank you so much for taking the time. I know this is a knotty problem and
Thanks, Leo.
one you deal with every day. Brett Glass is at lariat.net, also founder and president. Great to have you at Brett Glass. Lariat is LIARIAT.net.
Always great to be here, Leo. Thank you.
I really appreciate having you today. Thank you. I hope it's not too cold. And
It is, but we in Wyoming are used to it.
You're used to it. You got the wood stove. I hope this has helped a little bit. We're going to go back to our regular format and talk about the week's tech news with Mike Masnick of Tech Dirt. So glad you're here, Mike, and Myriam Joire. Great to have you both. We're going to reset. I'll let you guys reset, and I'll do a Squarespace commercial while we do it. Actually, before I do that, let's take a look at what you might have missed this week on Twit.
Previously on Twit.
Give me $5.
Whoa.
You want to talk about net neutrality? Are you asleep?
Triangulation.
You joke about your kids. Do they mind that? Of course they do. But they know when I die, there's an inheritance. So.
All about Android.
Is there a little bit of Nexus entitlement?
No, there's a lot of it. Is all these other phones getting updates quickly, which is what we've all wanted? Why is that a bad thing all of a sudden?
Because I have a Nexus phone and I want it now.
Mac Break Weekly.
Microsoft, they've announced that they're going to make Office for iPad free.
It seemed like an easy decision to say, let's give up a small amount of money with the idea that this is going to pay off big time by making our entire ecosystem a lot more valuable.
Twit. Technology for your eyes and ear holes.
On this episode of Know How Probes, we tell you how to put some... You know what? No. Amateurs do second takes. You do second takes.
Coming up this week, if you missed the last narrow and problematic window to pre-order a OnePlus One phone in October, you get another chance tomorrow, which is Monday, November 17th, but only from 8 a.m. Pacific to 9 a.m. OnePlus promises an improved pre-order system, and let's hope so. Demo Fall 2014 begins on Tuesday, November 18th in San Jose, California, and also on that same day, GigaOM Roadmap starts in San Francisco. That's what's coming up this week. Back to you, Leo.
Wow, this was, I wish we could have all said, oh no, this is what we definitely need to do, and that's that.
It's a complicated issue.
It's damn complicated. Anyway.
But I think we're all kind of, a lot of us, I think, agree at least on that net neutrality is something that needs to happen, how we define that.
Right.
But right now it's broken, right?
And we know we want to preserve the internet. I mean, that's clear.
I think a lot of things that were said today that I think matter is competition.
Yeah.
Net neutrality is important. We need it. And then finally, that the system as we know it today is broken. There's too many duopolies, sometimes monopolies for people.
I think a lot of people would say, most people would say, nothing's broken. Hey, we're happy. I get high-speed internet. It's working great. My Netflix is coming in fine. I can use my cell phone pretty much anywhere and then surf the net.
They see their bill at the end of the month.
Well, it's expensive, but you know what? It's worth it. It's worth $60 a month because internet is huge. Do you think there's a common feeling in the world, in the United States, that the internet is broken, Mike?
Well, I think there is a real fear that the big broadband ISPs have too much power, and just the fact that you say, yeah, Netflix is working now, but
it wasn't last year. No, yeah.
For a few months there, it wasn't really working. I mean, that's an interconnect question. And some people say that's separate from net neutrality, but it's clearly a related thing. It's an issue of market power. And, going back to the John Oliver thing, the dingo comment was great too. But
now I know where the dingo came from.
Didn't get that?
I get it now. Of course, John Oliver. Yeah.
But the thing that I think was even more important about what he was saying was that what net neutrality is really about is stopping the big broadband players from messing with with your internet connection.
Right.
And that's really what it comes down to, is that when they have too much market power, it's no longer a free market. There isn't competition, and so they get away with things. And they've been they've been very clear for a decade now that this is exactly what they wanted to do. They wanted to have the market power to demand extra money, which is really double paying from the big service providers, because effectively they're jealous, right? I mean, Netflix is super successful, Google is super successful, and they want some of that cash. And so they've figured out ways to try and extract it. And, that's what this fight is really about.
I do have to say, I feel like it's very easy to do kind of a reductionist thing. I think look, I loved the John Oliver piece, but ultimately it's a little bit reductionist. In order to make this a clear choice, you have to reduce the issues a little bit and maybe be a little untrue to the choice. And that's the problem with, I think what I tried to do today was not be reductionist, but really give you some of the issues. But what happens then is that's very thorny. That is a tough one. Yeah. And you don't really know, well, what path do we pursue here? And I think people want an easy answer, but I've seen so many, Vihart's incredible illustrations of net neutrality and all that. But frankly, they're almost all reductionist. They don't really state the problem fully.
But I think that's true of all the news out there.
Well, that's news.
And in case of John Oliver, it's entertainment anyway, ultimately.
Yeah, and he does a great job. And I thought that was a great piece. And it made me go, yeah.
And he got the trolls going.
Don't get the trolls going. It's never worth it.
Yeah, but I mean, the other issue that's related to that is just the fact that not only is the issue complicated, but the potential solutions or the solutions that are on the table. This idea of Title II versus Section 706. Right. How many people are actually going to sit down and read those? And the answer is very, very few. And they are complex. And, it's true. Title II is a part of a law that was written in 1934. And so, the solutions and the issue are complicated. And so that makes it actually pretty difficult to really dive in and understand, what it really means for individuals.
The best thing, though, I think that we can do as geeks, and everybody who's watching this, you've qualified. The best thing we can do as geeks is to just let these guys know we're paying attention.
Yep. And
that we care. Yeah. And I think millions of comments to the FCC. Comcast is they're not insensate to all of that. And if we say, no, you know what, we want a free and open internet, they're going to moderate their behavior a little bit. Whether Congress or the courts or the FCC makes them, they are going to pay attention to their customers. And so the key is to stand up and be counted. Yeah. One way or the other.
But you can only do that if you know what's happening.
Well, right. And that's why we just spent an hour talking about it. We're going to take a break. When we come back, the news of the week. Mike Masnick from Tech Dirt, Myriam Joire, great to have you here as well. Our show today brought to you by Squarespace. Again, an amazing place to make your website. Squarespace is the best hosting, plus the best tools for managing, developing, creating your site. The best software on top of it. It's just amazing. They just launched Squarespace 7. I'll give you one example of what's changed in Squarespace 7. Now you can edit your site's design in place, WYSIWYG. So you're on the site, you can move it around, you can change it, and immediately see the result. You're getting live editing, no more toggling between Site Manager and Preview mode. You start with gorgeous templates designed for a variety of businesses. There's a template that works particularly well with bands, for instance, the Horizon template. Artists, architects, chefs, whatever your business. E-commerce is available on every template. Every template's mobile responsive. That means you don't have to have a separate mobile site. Your site just looks great on every size screen. And you get instant access to professional stock photography from Getty, instant branded email setup with Google Apps. There's an amazing developer platform. If you are, a guru, you can make a business. A lot of people make businesses out of Squarespace, designing sites for clients. It's so easy to use, but if you want some help, they have live chat and email support 24/7 from their offices in New York, plus self-help articles and video workshops that you can browse at your leisure. And best of all this is $8 a month. And when you sign up for a year, you get the domain name free. Start a 2-week free trial right now. You don't have to give them a credit card. Just click the Get Started button on any Squarespace page when you decide to sign up. I would ask you one favor. Please use the offer code TWIT. You'll get 10% off, and then they'll know that you heard it on This Week in Tech. Squarespace.com. Please use the offer code TWIT. By the way, if you're an existing customer and you want to use 7, just go in your settings and you can activate all the new features. That's nice. That's the beauty of having your hosting and your software integrated like that. Squarespace. audible.com. Use the offer code TWIT. A better website for all awaits. I'm looking at the net neutrality tab on TechDirt. You've got a lot of great stories. I mentioned the AT&T thing. Comcast says they support the president's net neutrality plan, except for that, I don't know, that Title II thing. It's kind of amazing.
Yeah. Well, the thing with Comcast is they've been running ads all summer that say we totally support net neutrality.
Right.
Except that they don't.
No.
And so, they've really figured out that because this is a complicated issue, they can basically say that they support it and try and trick people into saying into believing they support it when they don't.
What a world.
They're just lying, basically.
Yeah.
The big
Right in your
lie.
face,
It lives on.
TV.
Yeah. It
It's
lives
okay,
on.
They own TV, right?
It's just amazing. I think this is not something we're done with. We'll continue to cover it. We'll let you know what the moves are, and I think your best bet is to at least to write your member of Congress, your Congress critter, as Cory Doctorow would say, and let them know you feel strongly about this, and tell them what you want. I'm not going to tell you what to say, but EFF does have a great action page, EFF.org. I think it's /action, where they have not only will get you your member of Congress's email and mail address. Snail mail's best, by the way, or a phone call, but they'll give you. There you go. Help us fight for your digital rights. They also they're active in surveillance, the NSA spying. Hey, here's a good one. Have you heard about Dirtboxes? Oh, my God. So this was in the Wall Street Journal this week. Apparently, the Department of Justice is flying Cessnas, small planes, out of 19 airports all over the country. These small planes have something built by Boeing called a Dirtbox inside. And what they do is they pose as a cell tower. And all the phones below these Cessnas will log into this cell tower. They will harvest your unique ID, your geolocation, and who knows what else. They'll get as much as they can from you as they fly over. They say, quote, non-suspect cell phones are let go.
Ooh.
But if you're a suspect, well, we got you. Now, I got to tell you, in no instance has the NSA ever let go of any of that information. They just store it for later use. And I have to think that the Department of Justice
Are we allowed to swear? Wait, I'm just asking because, is the NSA trying to...
Go ahead, say it.
Is the NSA trying to help us over?
Well, this isn't the NSA. This is the DOJ.
Whatever. There's somebody out there that's just thinking, how can we screw them over?
This is about as bad as
even
you could get.
more, right? It's like everybody tries to outdo themselves as how much they can screw us over.
Non-suspect cell phones are let go, but the Dirtbox focuses on gathering information from the target. They're flying these all the time. Over 90% of the U.S. population. Who's the target?
90% of the human in the U.S.
Who's the target? What are you? I don't understand. When I see helicopters hovering overhead, I figure, there's a bad guy with a gun running around. But these are going all the time, every day, The plane moves to another position to detect signal strength and location, and the system can use that information to find the suspect within 3 meters or within a specific room in a building. And they're flying these all the time.
I tell you, they're trying to compete for how, worse they can be.
Dirtbags. Dingoes. Dingoes. They're all dingoes. Chris Segoyan, who we love, he's at the ACLU chief technologist, but he's also one of the best security guys out there. In fact, we got to get Chris Segoyan on these. It's Sal Segoyan's brother. We all know Sal. He says it's a, quote, dragnet surveillance program. It's inexcusable, and it's likely, to the extent judges are authorizing it, that they have no idea of the scale of it.
Yeah.
Yep.
The U.S. Marshals Service is doing this.
Yep.
They were bored.
I should point out that the courts have held that this kind of metadata, like location, cell phone number, cell phone ID, is not considered content, so you don't need a warrant to harvest it. It's the same, so a pen register will work, So this is basically, I'm sure there's no judge or court overseeing this. This is just,
it's a little bit different in that the stuff with the metadata versus data is, where they're going to a third party and getting it. Here, the government is the third party. The government is stepping in and collecting this data themselves with the fake towers. And, it's the airplanes, the revelation this week, that's a big deal. But the fact is the U.S. Marshal Service has been giving out these things, not attached to planes, but been giving out what's called stingrays, which is basically the same thing, but on the ground. They've been giving them to police departments around the country and making them sign NDAs so that the police departments can't even talk about it, including to judges. So even when cases come up that use this evidence, they don't tell the judges, and so the people who are caught using it can't even protest that it's violating their Fourth Amendment rights in any way. And so the whole thing is a complete mess.
Segoyan says, yeah, well, maybe if you're trying to track a drug dealer involving hundreds of people might be okay, but not tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of innocent people. The Department of Justice, U.S. military and intelligence say this technology has been effective in catching suspected drug dealers and killers, but they won't say who, because as you say, Mike, they don't reveal that. It's unclear, this is the Wall Street Journal, how closely the Justice Department oversees the program. One person familiar with the program said, what is done on U.S. soil is completely legal. Whether it should be done is a separate question. Of the stingrays, Chris Segoyan said, maybe it's worth violating the privacy of hundreds of people to catch a suspect, but is it worth thousands or tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of people's privacy? Verizon, by the way, says, it's not our towers. Verizon says, we are unaware of the program, but the security of our network and privacy is top priorities. However, to be clear, the equipment referenced in the article is not Verizon's.
Because that solves everything.
AT&T and Sprint declined to comment.
Wow.
Unbelievable. All right, I just thought I'd mention that.
Wow.
By the way, AT&T, so you heard that both Verizon and AT&T were sending a unique identifier to any website that you surf to on a Verizon or AT&T phone. AT&T said, oh, that was just a pilot program. We're not going to do that anymore.
We tried it. It works, but we're going to stop now.
They did. In fact, they said, and anything we gathered, we will sell that data, but we're not going to do that anymore.
Right, but Verizon's not stopping.
No.
Oh, no.
Verizon's keeping
But they say, as with any program, we are constantly evaluating it.
Right. But that gets back to the net neutrality question, right? And this idea that can you make enough noise to stop the bad behavior?
Right.
And, sometimes you can, but in Verizon's case, in this situation, apparently you can't.
Get this. Verizon says the data it sells is not tied to a user's identity. None of the data that is used in the program is personally identifiable. There is a unique identifier for, this is a Verizon phone. This phone has a unique identifier, and every time I surf on the Verizon network, that unique identifier is sent to the website.
Yep.
Yeah, maybe Verizon's not sending them my name with the identifier, but they don't have to.
Nope.
That's easily put together. That's trivial. Verizon says you can opt out, but it won't remove the tracking ID. I don't know what that means.
It means you can't opt out.
You can opt out.
There's an opt-out button.
We're not going to stop doing it.
But nothing happens when you click it.
Unbelievable. Pone to own, you know about that. That's a fun, CanSec West does that every year where they put out unmodified operating systems of all the major computers and they bring the hackers in. And there's a fairly large prize in the Pone to own contest. They now do a mobile Pone to own. This was held at PACSEC's Applied Security Conference in Tokyo on Thursday. If you find a bug, a $150,000 prize, $100,000, that's in the OS, $100,000 for messaging services, $75,000 for short distance, like a Bluetooth exploit, $50,000 for browser apps.
Wow.
So they had a Fire phone. I don't know why they bothered, but anyway.
Because it was easy to hack.
It's easy to find. An Apple phone, iPhone 5S. I guess they didn't have a more modern one. The Galaxy S5.
I know, they're not using the latest phones.
Well, but I bet they're using 8.1.
They keep them at the end if they hack them?
Yes, they do.
Yeah, well, then you need to have the latest.
Yeah. Who was it? What was the guy name who always, he pwned the Mac every time, and he'd always get a new laptop every year?
I don't remember his name, but I remember the story.
Dan Kaminsky, I think.
That's
right?
it.
Yeah. Samsung Galaxy S5, Google Nexus. All completely owned or pwned. I'm sorry, I didn't spell it.
I bet you nobody tried to hack the Fire phone because nobody wanted it.
No, somebody pwned it. The Lumia 1520 running Windows Phone was partially pwned. don't know what partially pwned means.
It's Pone.
Am I saying Pone right? You guys are hackers. Am I saying that right? P-W-N?
I'll say it that way.
What?
Partially pwned.
Mike, do you say owned or pwned?
I go with pwned too, but it always sounds weird when I do. So
pwned to own. The 1520 partially pwned.
Pwned.
That's pwned. Yeah. The BlackBerry Z30, the iPad Mini, and the Nexus 7. Nobody wanted them, so they weren't targeted at all.
Wow. That's random.
They don't reveal the exploits, by the way, to the public until they're first shared with the vendors. And once the bugs are closed, then they'll tell the rest of us.
I wonder how that works. You know, if you find a bug in Apple's stuff and you go up to them and say, hey, I found this.
I pwned you, baby.
They kill you instantly, right? Like there's lasers coming out of the sky. Zop.
The 5S was owned via the Safari browser by exploiting 2 known bugs. Guys, wait. People like Kaminsky, they collect these all year long. And they hold on to them until the pwn to own. And then it's really, I've got to see one of these. Have you ever been to one of these? It would be so much fun to do this.
I haven't.
They do it in Vancouver, I think.
Then my phones will be hacked.
I know. It's like going to Black Hat or DEF CON. You don't want to bring anything. The Fire Phone was breached via 3 bugs in its browser, the Fire browser. The Galaxy S5 was targeted via NFC. One triggered a deserialization issue in certain code. The other targeted a logical error. And the Nexus 5 was forced... this sounds kind of vaguely sexual. Was forced to pair with another phone via Bluetooth.
Oh, boy.
Don't make me pair with that phone! Pwn to own. I just like saying that. Apple Pay has been very successful. Apple is saying now that, well, maybe actually McDonald's said this, 50% of all of McDonald's tap-to-pay transactions.
Are you using it?
I haven't used it. Are you?
No, I don't have a 6 or 6 Plus yet.
Well, the good news is Whole Foods, for instance, says it has had 150,000 Apple Pay transactions in the last 2 weeks since 8.1 was released. McDonald's has seen a rush of customers. 50% are been from Apple Pay, but that means that 50% are from other tap-to-pay devices.
No, probably Google.
Credit cards or Google Wallet. And that's really the point. Both Google Wallet and SoftCard, which is the Verizon solution formerly known as the terrorist group ISIS.
They renamed that in a hurry,
really
didn't they?
Didn't take long.
It was like, boom.
They say they got a bit bump in usage as well. So this, as soon as the awareness of tap to pay, in fact, that's what I've been tempted to do is just bring my.
You're just trying to break your phone.
I'm just throwing my. Well, it's a Verizon phone. I just want to get rid of it.
How is that, by the way?
This is the Droid Turbo. It's good because it's a Moto X with a massive battery.
And the big, awesome display. Wow, that display is really nice.
It's gorgeous, isn't it?
Wow.
I love these new. You know, this burns me a little bit. Because the companies come along with big stuff like the Nexus 6 and the Droid Turbo, big batteries, honking great batteries in Note 4. And then instead of saying, great, we're going to give you 25 hours of battery life, they say, well, as long as we've got such a big battery, let's put a 2550 by 1440 display on it and
kill the battery life.
A 3 gigahertz processor, and by then it's back to normal. Can I just have some battery life? That's all I want.
I thought that was good, though. This is still best
of
the crop, right?
This is almost, no, OnePlus One has better battery life, just barely. But this is almost, and it's got all the Moto features, like I could say,
yeah.
Help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Is that what you said, too?
Yeah.
Didn't work.
Help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi. You're my only hope. So it listens when I say that. Well, you know what? I realized this, by the way. You have to have a long phrase. Because my watch wakes up, if I just say, okay, my watch wakes up. Have you noticed that?
Sometimes, yeah.
Okay, shush. I'm not talking to you now.
You've proven your point.
And have you noticed that if you turn on the Hey Siri thing on, I'm sorry, everybody at home's getting mad at me right now.
Why?
Because their phones are waking up.
Oh, let's try this again. Are we ready?
No.
Come on.
No, don't do it.
Okay, Google.
So I have now turned off Hey Siri on all of my iPhones because it wakes up in the middle of the night.
Let's do the Xbox.
My snoring must sound like.
You want to do the Xbox? Come on, we can do the Xbox.
Oh, what do you say on the Xbox?
I don't know. What is it?
Xbox pause.
That's right.
And then all the people watching us on Xbox now are not watching us anymore. That sucks.
It's counterproductive, Leo.
Look at the chat room. You see, there goes my watch. My Xbox just powered off.
It's Xbox power off.
Bad girl. Bad. You're a dingo.
I can't help it. Not as much as Tom Wheeler.
Not as much as nobody's as much of a dingo as Tom Wheeler.
Okay.
50% of Apple Pay, 50% of McDonald's tap-to-pay transactions. I'm sure that's the statistic that Apple would love to tout. More Big Macs were sold with Apple Pay than any other tap-to-pay device.
Because phones have grown bigger.
Yeah. As the people who own them grow bigger.
Because of McDonald's.
Has anybody used the YouTube music? It's called Music Key.
No.
Service. I think it rolls out this week. If you have All Access, the
right.
Google Music service, you'll get it automatically.
Is it key.google.com?
Actually, just go to youtube.com and you should see a music tab.
Ooh.
That's new at the top of your screen. Yeah, I've got it. Now, it's not doing anything special right now. I'm getting YouTube mixes, nonstop play. Oh, I guess I am getting it. These are nonstop playlists based on a song or artist.
Where's that tab?
You don't have it on your YouTube?
Oh, I have it right there. Ooh.
See that? It says in the mood for music. Play it again. Music I've listened to before.
Taylor Swift.
I did not listen to Taylor Swift take it. I did not listen to her shake it off.
You did.
It says I did, but it's
just saying.
Recent activity on Google Play Music. So this is kind of cool, and the idea is that you'll have ad-free music, but not ad-free YouTube. I'm sorry.
Half of it is from Vivo, and half of it is Taylor Swift. That's my takeaway.
Nicki Minaj, Pills and Potions. I don't think I listened. Nicki Minaj, Va Va Voom. Why did I don't think I listened to all this Nicki Minaj.
Susie Sue and the Banshees, a mix.
Susie and the Banshees.
That's
Remember her?
more our thing.
Yeah. That's because we're old.
I know. Shh, don't tell anyone.
Here's a Hitting the Gym mix. This is straight out of... See, I'm getting an ad right now, but once this clicks in, I won't get an ad.
You sure about that?
Yeah, that's what they say. Ad-free, and you can play forever.
Oh, my.
This is what Google thinks I want to listen to in the gym. Why would I want video?
Oh,
for those of you listening at home, you're really missing the fun.
You know, this is actually pretty
This is fairly homoerotic, I got to tell you.
I know. Wow.
What year was...
It's Olivia Newton-John. It's like 80-something.
81.
Wow,
1981.
And look, you like the Tron grid in the back?
Yeah, isn't that's high tech.
I think you and I should do a Mystery Science Theater 3000.
It's Olivia Newton-John and her Cabana Boys present Let's Get Physical.
That's right.
This is Google's suggestion to me.
Well, they clearly love you.
I think I'm the guy on that exercise cycle.
Wow.
Oh. All right.
Oh my God.
All right. We're gonna take a break. We gotta take a break. I'm
Stop
overheating
it now.
I'm overheating.
Stop it now.
Can I get a snack? Would you like a snack, Myriam?
Sure. What you got
Mike, if
here?
you would come up next time, I will give you a snack.
Absolutely.
A NatureBox snack.
Ooh,
NatureBox sends
look at that.
delicious, nutritionist designed snacks to your door. You get to choose.
Flax Fortune coins.
Flax Fortune coins are quite good. The blueberry nom noms.
Kettle popcorn.
That's really good. Coffee kettle popcorn, Big Island pineapple if you like dried fruit. All of these are nutritionist approved. No HFCs, no trans fats, no artificial flavors, no artificial colors, just delicious snacks. And I'm going to get you 5 snacks for free. I'll get you a sampler right now. If you go to naturebox.com/twit, you've just paid $2 for shipping. It's a great way to try NatureBox to get an idea of what NatureBox offers. Drop the candy bar. Put away the potato chips. Those aren't good for you. Get delicious, wholesome snacks from naturebox.com for the kids, for the family, for business. NatureBox has literally hundreds of snacks on their webpage. You could choose from savory, sweet, or spicy. You like sriracha? You seem like a sriracha kind of person.
Maybe.
No?
That's okay.
You're not
Flax.
You want the
Flax
Flax Fortune cookies?
Well, I'm going to do the popcorn.
Coffee,
you said
kettle
the popcorn
corn.
is like the way to go.
You know, next time you get hungry in the afternoon, don't go to the candy machine. Grab a lemon pucker pistachio or a strawberry Greek yogurt pretzel or a mango orange fruit chew. And you got the coffee kettle corn with coffee caramelized popcorn. All of these, by the way, in sealed bags that you can reseal, which is really nice. Actually, I don't think you can reseal this one. You have to eat the whole thing. Sorry.
It's okay.
NatureBox, and look right on the side there. Nutritionist approved.
For the drive home.
You can have that for the drive home.
Thank you.
Naturebox.com/twit. All of you can have a free sample. You just pay the $2 postage, and look at Olivia's still singing.
Still going.
And the guys are going off together in the gym.
And she's like, "Oh no, guys!"
She chose that one.
Well, there you go.
Now I know why Google chose this video for me. Olivia likes.
Wow.
Big men. I'm not fat. I'm thick. Do not clear data for Google Service Framework. This is funny. Did you talk about this on All About Android? I bet you did, Jason. In fact, I know you did. I saw it in the promo. Yeah. So the Moto X apparently is only a small number of people are getting updates to Lollipop on the Moto X. But it's pissing the Nexus 5 folks off. Because they say, but I bought the Google phone and I'm not getting Lollipop yet.
And the G3 is getting Lollipop, and the Moto G is getting Lollipop.
Wait a minute, the Samsung G3?
No, the LG G3.
Oh, the LG G3. Is it?
In some markets, Poland.
So, actually, there was a post on Reddit by a Google engineer who explained how this works, just so you know.
On Reddit, of all things.
Yeah. This is the PSA. It says, do not clear data for Google Service Framework. Now, if you are a geek enough to know
how to do that?
Why?
I'll show you right now.
No, I could do it, but there is a reason not to do this. So why are people doing this? Because they are getting the APK or whatever it's called, the zip. Actually, I think it's a tar file for the OS update, and all of the final images are available for all the phones.
Mm-hmm.
They're downloading them, but in order to install them, you have to jump through some hoops, and what some people are doing is screwing up their phones by changing this framework, by resetting this framework. And when you do that, when you clear data for the Google Service Framework, you think Tom Brokaw could say that? Google Service Framework.
We need somebody with a hot potato in their mouth.
Google Service Framework. It changes.
Connery.
Sean Connery. If you change the Google Service Framework,
that's right.
It'll change the primary ID by which Google knows your device, and that's not good because it invalidates the tokens any app uses. All your apps will break. You'll have to log out and log back in. It's a mess. Don't do it. This guy is a engineer at Google. He says nothing bursts into flames, but it makes a ton of nuisances on the device, including some that can look pretty mysterious. Now, what he does say, just so you know, is that 1% of all Android devices, in this case the Moto X, will get it in the first week. 1%. There is no point in hitting reload.
Everybody goes to that system update and taps it.
Notice it never it doesn't change.
No. Rarely, if ever, you'll ever see it switch right over. I've had it happen.
Yeah, but that's okay because that's because you're
luck.
On the cusp
it's
of week
really
2.
Luck. Yeah, exactly.
So what he says is we pick a random 1% and those people update, and then we wait for the howls of pain. and if you know there are no big showstoppers at that point.
Nope.
Let me try mine. There are no big. You have a Nexus 5.
Yep.
There are no big showstoppers at that point. Then we will do 25% the second week. So if you're using one of those phones, a Moto X G3, Nexus,
it's preemptive.
4 or 5.
It said it checked at 440, 428, and then
it's always checking.
Of course, it's always.
There's
checking.
no point in doing this refreshing.
No, why don't
you're
people
not in the 1%?
Wait?
You're not in the 1%. Just be patient.
It's Lollipop. It's great. I've got it on my Nexus 9, but it's not like gonna change your life or something.
No. Because people have been waiting however long for it already, and now that it's out. They got to have it right now, particularly Nexus fans, like Nexus owners.
The excitement of when you finally get it in a week or two.
Well, and I mean, the other side of this is, like you said, ADB sideload. That's going to go over a lot of people's head. But if you really need to do this, you download the Android SDK, plug it into your computer with a USB, and you do a couple of terminal commands. It works.
Do not do that.
No. If you really need to, there is an option
Lollipop.
for you. You're going to wipe your phone in the process, so it has a downside. You start from scratch, but there are options. You don't have to wait if you don't want to.
If you're the kind of person that watches All About Android every week,
then perhaps you should do it.
You should do that.
You know, I love
the majority of people aren't going to do that, though.
I hope not.
Because
I love it when Jason's
just complicated
enough. Jason's our guy now.
I know. Look
he is
at
the
that.
lead producer. Isn't that
Look
great?
at the seriousness.
He's powerful. He's also the first producer I've ever had that I can actually see over the top of the screen.
It's true. Well, the problem is where the screen is located. I know you're looking at the screen, but I'm pretty sure you're looking at me the entire time because your eye level is
all the time.
He's doing this. You're doing this.
I got my eye on you.
A lot of pressure.
All right, Google Glass, is it dead?
Yes.
When exactly did it die?
I'll tell you, for me, when my Google Glass usage died.
You have one?
I have it. Yeah, I have an Explorer. I'm an Explorer. I paid the crazy money. Let me think when I really stopped using it. I think it was sometime in the spring to summertime-ish. After Mobile World Congress sometime, there was a firmware
kind of lose
update
interest.
that really borked the battery life.
Oh, really? Oh.
And it's never recovered from that, really.
Mike, are you a glass hole?
I have. I've actually never even tried it.
Good.
So
Good for
I
you.
haven't
Stay that
used
way.
I think it's interesting. Here I am on Reuters with this article, Google Glass, future clouded as some early believers lose faith. And they have a picture of Sergey Brin.
Who's not wearing them.
Not wearing them. He's worn them, because it's his baby. He's been wearing them ever since they came out. He was at the red carpet during the second annual Breakthrough Prize Awards at NASA Ames on November 9th, not wearing them. The first time he's been seen in public. And then oddly enough, right next to it, Viagra helps guys with ED get and keep an erection. So I think that there's some relationship between wearing Google Glass and erectile dysfunction.
I guess.
I don't know. I'm just saying. Google wouldn't put this ad there.
So I did have a weird experience that kind of also made me question glass. Was at Mobile World Congress, I was on, I'm a T-Mobile customer, so I had free roaming.
Me too. Love
right?
it. Isn't that awesome?
Fantastic.
Yes.
Best thing ever, right?
Yes.
Guess what? So Google Glass is supposed to do its updates and download the mega gigabytes of update only when it's battery powered on a Wi-Fi network, correct?
Right.
So I was at Mobile Congress, not on Wi-Fi, but I had plugged my glass to charge over like a USB battery.
Yeah.
And for some magical reason, it decided to download the update over my over my connection.
That's bad.
My roaming connection.
Now, everybody's telling me, by the way, that they're not seeing that Viagra ad.
But here's the
that it's only on
it's only you. but here's the thing, Leo. So it downloads this update, and I call the guys at T-Mobile like, are you going to kill me now because I just downloaded 2 gigabytes on my data roaming?
Yeah.
And they're like, no.
The fact that it even worked is amazing.
They're like,
no,
that's
it's
a
free.
lot of data,
Free is
but
free.
it's free. Free is free. You don't have to
But
worry
it's
about it.
It's 2G, right? It's not high speed.
No, it's not high speed. So I called Google.
Yeah.
I called the glass.
I said, why did you do this?
Like,
I'm in Europe.
I'm like, what the? Okay,
Yeah.
what? Like,
What the dingo?
And they're like, you're not supposed to take glass abroad. You broke the terms of service.
What? It says you can't take glass abroad?
No, it's the total load of bullshit. But it's like they played that game with me of like, you didn't use it right. You took it with you abroad. You're not supposed to do that.
We haven't. Wow.
Right?
Okay,
I'm like,
so
talk about customer service.
Bryn told a reporter, I brought it, I left it in the car. I'm not kidding. I swear to God.
Because he drives with it, clearly.
The Google Glass rollout, the actual mass market sales, you can still buy it for $1,500, but presumably they're going to do a less expensive version. That they're saying now is down the road, maybe not till next year or the year after. Of the 16 glass app makers that Reuters contacted, 9 said they'd stopped work or abandoned their projects because of lack of customers or limitations of the device. 3 more have switched to developing for business only. So let's see, 9. That means there's 4 consumer projects remaining. There are also several key Google employees in the Glass division have left the company in the last 6 months. Lead developer Babak Parviz, electrical engineering chief Adrian Wong, and Osama Alami, who is the director of developer relations. You got to think this is kind of the beginning of the end, right?
Yep.
I said right when it came out, I said, I don't really think that this is designed to be a consumer product. This is designed to understand wearables. We don't understand them yet. And to get some data, some info. Google's a data-driven company. I think this is also telling. Remember, there was a VC fund for glass development. The website's gone. Routes Glass uses the main glass site. I think that's pretty much the end of the line on this.
Yeah.
Are we sad? No. Who cares?
No, but I mean, honestly, I think there are a lot of issues with the way glass users, use their devices, which I think got maybe blown out of proportion by some people. I think there's a root kind of cultural societal issue that made glass fail in some ways.
It really came back and bit it, didn't it?
Right. But I think at the same time, I think kudos to Google for trying, for going crazy, going out there, trying to build the tech, making it happen, and making it relatively reasonably affordable, and so we could get to see what it would be like when it's incorporated in these glasses.
Here's the good news: if you go to eBay, you can get Google Glass 2.0 XE with all original accessories in box, $730.
Still too much money.
$750. These are half off.
Yeah.
Then there's some idiot selling it for $2,000. Obviously, didn't get the memo.
I still think it's an interesting project. The idea is really interesting, and I think we're seeing some of what they learned in the Android Wear stuff and the smartwatches. And so, I don't think it was a bad idea.
No, I agree.
Execution, certainly created some issues in a variety of ways. But the idea of wearables and doing interesting things with wearables, I think that's definitely the right direction for them to be.
Google, I should say that Google did give a statement to Reuters saying, no, we are as committed to glass as a consumer product as ever. This is going to take time, and we're not going to launch this product until it's absolutely ready. That's Glass head of business operations, Chris O'Neill.
I wrote an editorial for Android Central back in April, May about my glass experience. If you guys want to look for Google it. My name, Glass, Android Central.
Myriam Glass Hole.
Yeah, there you go.
Myriam Joire. I'm with both of you. I really feel like this is wearables is clearly a category that's going somewhere. What I think we've seen so far is it's not clear how or what features or what technologies. There you go. Glass didn't really seem to do it. I was never as excited. In fact, when I got a Glass invitation and I bought them, but I gave them to Jason because he had a kid.
Yeah, and I mean they've come in really handy for very specific, the very specific use of videotaping my kids from a my own point of view, which I've got some amazing
But you don't wear it
video.
anymore.
I mean, I keep it charged.
Me too.
And I wait for those moments where I'm like Savannah's first steps. It was perfect for that, right? It was charged
You got
up.
the greatest
I was
video.
ready, and I knew I had a feeling, and she took her first steps while I was wearing glass, and that's a video that I will always cherish because it was actually from my point of view. So it's like reliving an experience.
Yeah.
Do we think that glass at this point, as far as we're almost 3 years into this grand experiment?
Is it that long?
Yep. It's close to the time where Google actually mentioned it at all to everyone. It's almost 3 years.
Wow.
And I don't know. I feel like the social damage has been done on this particular product, and I don't think. Yeah. If Google had something to follow up with, I really think they'd be defending the product at this point a lot more than they are. I think Wear's kind of come along and solved a lot of those problems, and wearables in general, by just basically saying, look, a lot of the really cool, compelling things that there were, that were use cases for glass, you're now getting on your wrist in a form factor that people are used to seeing and aren't intimidated and frightened by.
I am a fan, I have to say, of Android Wear. I think this Moto 360 is great.
It's a great watch.
And I've seen a clear use case for it.
Yeah.
For instance, I can navigate when I'm walking around with the maps, and it will tell me to turn left. It'll buzz at me. And pausing a movie last night. I mean, there's definitely a clear use case for it.
Yeah.
I wear it every day now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, obviously.
Mike Butcher in TechCrunch said Glass has taken over from the Segway, hyped as a game changer, but ultimately used by warehouse workers and mall cops.
So now they're wearing glass riding their Segways.
Yeah. In fact, I think that's where you're going to see them.
And, that's really safe. I'm just saying. I think we should talk about Microsoft.
Is there anything to say about Microsoft? The Microsoft Shackle?
The 535 it's cool.
They're not going to sell it in the U.S., I don't think. This is the new Lumia, the first
it doesn't
Lumia.
have LTE, but you know what? For an unlocked phone, the specs it has, it's actually pretty damn cool.
It's pretty clear that Microsoft has decided that it's going to take the Windows Phone platform in a particular direction. They're going to make it for developing markets. They're going to make low-cost phones. The 1520 is the last flagship, the icon, the last flagship, and these are not being updated, and they're not. And frankly, I don't think going to
I
change
wouldn't
it.
be surprised if we get something to follow up on
Not
the
this year.
930. Not this year, but after Mobile World Congress or at Mobile World Congress.
Mobile Congress is April?
February, March.
Oh, it's soon.
Mid-February this year? I don't know.
I think this isn't a bad strategy for Microsoft because really all the growth in, I have to say, everybody in the United States has chosen Android or iPhone pretty much.
Yeah.
Where you're going to go to grow, you're going to go to the developing world where they maybe haven't yet purchased that first smartphone.
Indeed. But I think this is what's particular about this device is that this is the first Microsoft-branded Nokia phone.
There's no Nokia.
There's no Nokia.
Nokia.
It's a
the
Lumia.
Nokia name is gone.
Let's see, Microsoft Devices Lumia 535.
Let's be frank. Putting the name Microsoft on the back of the phone is not going to help their sales practice.
I actually personally think that losing the Nokia brand was something they should
Nokia's a good brand.
They should have negotiated. But you know what you realize?
No, they can still use it.
Yeah, I know.
The deal allows them to use it for at least another year.
Yeah, another year. But you know that Nokia proper, the company that's left that does all the maps,
Here Maps are great.
They're going to make a smartphone. It's going to run Android, and it's going to be Nokia branded. It's going to come out in a year or two. Guaranteed.
And it's going to, because they still have a very good brand in the third world, developing nations, it's going to do great. And Microsoft, once again, cut off at the pass.
Yep. And we'll see. I mean, maybe they don't have all the good people with the right expertise in the, that they got absorbed by Microsoft or whatever. Because the one thing about Nokia is they have more expertise than anyone else at things like power efficiency, radios, all that stuff that's really critical, especially in developing nations for phones. So.
What do you use, Mike?
For a phone?
Yeah.
I have a Samsung Galaxy S4.
Yeah.
So
I judge people by the phones they use.
Me too. Samsung.
Well, no, actually, I'm waiting for my OnePlus One, which is in the mail. So
you're going to love it.
I have one of those.
It kills me. That's still the best battery life. 20 hours easy of any phone I've used, and it's $300.
Yeah, that was my one fear with it. I've always stuck with phones that had replaceable batteries.
Yeah,
and so that's the first one that I was like, well, it's big enough that I think I'll deal with it without the replaceable battery.
You don't need it. And I have a Note 4, and I bought a second battery for it, but if you don't need a second battery, it's better than carrying one around. And I have to say, also supercharging helps a lot. These speed charging capabilities of the Note 4, the Nexus 6 is going to have it, the Moto X has it, the Turbo has it. You get, 15 minutes gives you like 25%, half an hour gives you half. So you get in the shower, you go out, you're clubbing, you're out late. I know you do this all the time, Myriam. You're out late, you stay up all night, you're partying. They got the foam
I party so much.
And then you get home, it's 8 in the morning, you got to go to work. You put the phone on the supercharger, you hop in the shower. By the time you're on your way to work, you got a full charge, almost a full charge.
And then what happens?
You crash and burn.
Yeah. But it's interesting because I've long been an advocate of destroying the argument people bring to me when they say removable batteries are a thing. Because I think it isn't a thing. Because to remove your battery, you need to power down the phone. At that point, you lose your clipboard, you lose all the apps that are running. That's not true.
I do it all the time. In fact, it's good for your phone to power it down.
No, I think having a USB battery stick, a very small, powerful one, is great. And only...
Yeah, Mike and I are...
You need to start with a phone that has good battery life, I think.
So here's the thing. So the phone that I had before the Samsung, which I'm blanking on which phone it was, the charge port...
How quickly you forget.
The USB port
Samsung,
actually broke. So the only way I could recharge that battery was to replace it.
Wow.
So every day I was flipping in and out the battery. So I became so used to it. The idea of not having a replaceable battery scared me.
I can see that, but you get used to it.
The other thing I like, and you still have to take off the back, is an SD card. It's nice to be able to...
No, that I agree. But I'm just saying.
I kind of like the Note 4. I don't know. I'm waiting for the Nexus 6. Do you have an Nexus 6?
Not yet. I'm waiting for mine
Mike,
too.
did you get a Nexus 6?
No.
They sent me a Nexus 9, but they said they didn't have enough Nexus 6s to go around.
I actually purchased one, and I'm waiting for it. Ships November 21st. I'm waiting to see. And then it's going to come down to 3 phones, a Droid Turbo or Moto X. If Lollipop gives it better battery life, I could go back to the Moto X 20.
It's a good phone.
I love it. But this is like a Moto X with like a big heavy
But it's on Verizon.
But it's on Verizon. I want T-Mobile. I agree
exactly,
with you.
yeah.
Or the Galaxy Note 4 on T-Mobile because I got an unlocked one, or the Nexus 6.
I'm still a big fan of the G3. The LG G3.
Really?
It's getting long in the tooth, but it's got overall the best balance of specs and
All right,
performance.
enough of this. I want to talk about Taylor Swift.
Let's do it. Let's do
I
it.
thought that would get a laugh.
We just talked about her.
We didn't talk about the fact that
how many
the
videos
back
you've
and forth between her and Spotify.
Oh, my God, yeah.
So she pulls all her songs off Spotify because she says mostly what they wanted was to say have Spotify say you can't listen to Taylor Swift on the free version, but if you pay the $10 a month, you can listen to Taylor Swift. Spotify wouldn't do that. So Swift said, I don't want people to think my albums are free. No. Then Daniel Ek, I think it's Ek. Somebody told me it's Ek. I always said Ek, the CEO of Spotify. Would our Swedish listeners tell me how to pronounce that? Daniel Ek or Ek of Spotify said, no, wait a minute, stop. Taylor Swift is on target to make $6 million this year from Spotify, several billion to the label. The label responds saying, what are you, nuts? We didn't get that kind of money. Spotify has now paid, according to Daniel Ek, $2 billion in royalties overall. He says an artist like Taylor Swift should be getting around $6 million a year. Problem is it does go to the label, not to Taylor. Maybe Taylor's got a bad deal with the label. And then in response, the label released its numbers. It's a mess.
It's a mess. I don't know.
Where do you get your Taylor Swift?
Free on YouTube?
Yeah.
Clearly. As demonstrated earlier.
Let's get physical.
I don't know. I just think it's like a lot of
I have come around. We talked about this last week because we had Rob Reed on, who founded Rhapsody, was the guy who came up with the $10 a month fee many years ago. And he said, we did the math. We did the math with the help of the recording industry. They believed that it would be better to get $10 a month from every consumer than to try to sell CDs, that CD sales were dying. In fact, we see that the first half of 2014, sales of CDs and downloads are down 14.6% year over year, according to the RIAA. So it's dying. People are not buying music. Meanwhile, Spotify, Pandora, YouTube growing rapidly.
Yep.
So he said at the time the record industry thought that would be a good thing. If artists are complaining, he said, you should talk to your label because they're getting plenty of money.
Yeah, sounds like a lot of whining.
Anyway.
And drama.
1989, Taylor Swift's new album, now available on iTunes. Just wanted to mention that. Mike Masnick, so nice to talk to you. Next time, drive up from Redwood City. We'll get you a great cup of coffee.
It's so good.
Give you some snacks.
Did you
so
get
good.
a coffee machine?
This is a new coffee machine. We're using the Breville. Isn't that fantastic?
It's absolutely amazing.
Highly recommended. And you got to get a really good grinder, burr grinder.
Of course.
We use
You have to do it right.
Barazza Vario.
There you go.
Significant investment, but for you and my employees and staff at the Twit Brick House, nothing is too good. Mike, anything you want to plug? TechDirt.com, obviously.
TechDirt.com is great. And
you're doing a podcast, right?
Yeah, we launched a podcast this week on Thursday. It's very small and lightweight, and we're just getting started.
That's just like us. We're small and lightweight.
Yeah.
No,
you
yeah,
guys,
sure.
King of the Hill. We're a little new entrant in the space, but check it out. Hopefully we're working on it. It's an experiment in progress.
Where should I find it? Just go to techdirt.com, or is there a special URL?
If you go to, I should know that. If you go to TechDirt, in the top right-hand corner where it says like share and stuff, there's a link to the little blue icon.
I see the podcast logo.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it's on SoundCloud.
Yes.
That makes it easy.
Nice.
Yep.
Can you increase privacy by increasing surveillance? That's the topic.
Yes.
36 minutes, chock full of goodness. Ad-free, I'm guessing.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
Hey, it's great. You know what? I welcome the competition because I read, like I said, I read Tech Dirt every single day, and I have for more than 10 years now. And I think you guys do a great job. So I'm really glad to have you on. I can't wait to hear the podcast. Yeah. Thanks to Myriam Joire, looking for work.
Yes, I'm looking for my next
We
big
said we would give you a plug at Tank Girl on Twitter, TNKGRL.
Tankgirl.com if you're looking for my website.
Should people tweet you if they have a job?
Yeah, you can tweet me and then we can direct message after that.
And you're looking for
and
what?
Also tankgirl like that at gmail.com. I'm looking for either something back in the media, like I used to do, something senior in the media, or back into communication like I did at Pebble, which was fun. You know, an executive position.
Yeah, how was that?
with a
You went
startup.
from being a journalist and editorial to working for a company. Was that?
They offered me a job after, as you know, I'm the one who wrote the story about Pebble on Engadget,
Right.
and it went kind of crazy.
You
after
were
that.
believable.
And
You
so
believe her,
then they
yeah.
were like, "Come work for us," and I was like, "What a crazy idea!" And then we did that for a year, and it was a good time. And now the next thing I'm kind of.
But you went over to the dark side.
Yes, but I can come back. Don't worry.
Okay.
And I continued on my blog. You know, being on the other side. I was on both sides. I was a fence sitter. And
No,
then,
you were. You never stopped really doing journalistic
no.
stuff, which I
and
love.
so my podcast, you can find my podcast at tankgirl.com and my site. And then, you know, maybe I'll get into some, I'm kind of into the crowdfunding, advising and strategy side of things. So if you guys are looking for somebody to help you with that.
She's great. And we'll have more of you on our shows, too, of course. I know you were on All About Android last week, and we'll have you back. Hey, I want to thank our live audience who sat through a marathon. I hope your brains expanded. And I appreciate your being here. I really do. If you want to be part of our live audience, all you have to do is email tickets@twit.tv, and especially pay attention to New Year's Eve. We're opening tickets for that as well. We're going to do our 24-hour marathon. This year it's for charity. It's for UNICEF. Lots of fun stuff. We're going to have 3 studios open. We're going to take over the street out front. We've got music. We've got games. We've got fun, and we'd love to have you. But we do have limited capacity, so you will have to email us. If you'd like to be on via Skype, we are looking for people in every time zone, because one of the things we love to do, we did this last year, it was great, is have a balloon drop and a countdown at midnight every time zone. So that's more than 24, by the way. Some of you are a quarter after and half past compared to us. So we will, if I could do every one of them, I think there's 27 time zones, I would do them all. So go to twit.tv/NYE to sign up. Yes, I admit it's, you know, New York and Sydney and some of the bigger cities are probably overrepresented. But if you're in, you know, if you're in the Solomon Islands, I would really like to hear from you.
Easter Islands.
Easter Islands.
Do you have internet there?
Oh, absolutely.
Satellite, of course.
Satellite. We'll do it by phone if we have to. Twit.tv/NYE. We're also planning for our holiday specials. Every year, most of the Twitch shows do a best of. TNT's going to do something different. Actually, Mike's got some great ideas, but we're going to do a best of. So go to twit.tv/best of and just tell us if there's a moment you liked in the past year. You don't have to know the exact date and time and everything, but the more information you give us, the better. That'll help Jason a lot. Jason's got to hack this all together.
He's good, though.
He's very good.
He's really good.
He's the best.
I have a lot of work ahead of me.
I know.
That is true.
Because you don't have to just do Twig. You got to do Twig. You got to do MacBreak Weekly.
I've started on some some of them already, but yeah, it's a lot to go
Help
through.
Jason.
Please.
Please.
Help me entertain you.
Twit.tv/best of. And we have I think another week on our T-shirt, or a shirt. It's not a T-shirt. Boy, these are not selling well, are they? Golly, I'm disappointed. I thought these were really cool. We have 2 choices. We were trying to come up with something that Twit fans could receive for the holidays, for Hanukkah or Christmas. And by the way, we will end this December 1st so that we have enough time to get you this before the end of Hanukkah or the beginning of Christmas. We've got an embroidered shirt with a men's shirt, women's shirt. We also have polo shirts, both with the Twit logo. They're nice. They're high quality. They're not super expensive. They do benefit Twit. I think is it all $30 every one of them? Something like that, yeah. And it would be very nice if, not just for you, but for the Twit fan. And if you're a Twit fan, tell your loved ones, you know what I'd like is this lovely T-shirt. Then if you come to our New Year's Eve show, we'll put you at work valeting cars.
Nice.
And Jeffen6 I think he's from Sweden, says the shirts are too small. Do we not have? Are we not doing the programmer sizes this year? What's the biggest?
Super mega.
Well, we usually do XXX. No, we don't do a triple X.
3XL.
We do a 3XL. All right.
Cool.
How big are you?
Small, medium, large, XL, 2XL, 3XL.
We'll figure it out. If you have a question, you can email Glenn, Glenn, at twit.tv. He'll figure it out for you. Hey, thank you for being here. We do Twit every Sunday afternoon, 3 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Eastern Time. That's 2300 UTC. If you'd like to stop by live and watch, and we appreciate everybody in the chat room. Fabulous. Really love having you. But if you can't, on-demand audio and video is always produced after each show, sometimes with the bad words taken out, sometimes with bad words put in. We just don't know what's going to happen. Depends on the editor. But you'll find those. No, they all have explicit free. They're non-explicit. What does that mean? They're implicit? What's the opposite of explicit? Anyway, they don't have bad words in them, and you can find them on iTunes and wherever you get your podcasts. Stitcher, we have Twit apps on almost every platform, including Roku. Get the shows there. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time. Another Twit
This is
in the can.